Hello, ladies and gentlemen, federal employees. Welcome back to another great episode of Plan Your Federal Benefits. With me, your host, Dallen Haws. Today is about the rich ratio and how or what it can tell us about your retirement and how prepared you are for retirement. And if your rich ratio, once you do this, is really good, you may say, hey, Dallen, thank you very much, that's great, that's helpful. But if your rich ratio is not so good, you may not like this near as much. But we're going to dig in regardless to give you some of the information that might be helpful to plan for retirement, to be prepared, and to dig in a little deeper with your own numbers after I go through some examples. So, the first thing that you have to know, since the rich ratio is not super common out there, is what the heck is the rich ratio and how can you calculate your own? So basically, in a very, very simplified nutshell, the rich ratio is what you have divided by what you need. When it comes to retirement, that's what retirement income you have lined up, ready to go, set for you when you pull the plug, divided by what you need / want in retirement to spend, okay? So, let's go through a very, very simple example, then we'll get into some nitty-gritty. So basically, if your income in retirement is, let's say, $5,000 a month, and your expenses and your needs in retirement is $5,000 a month, so it's $5,000 divided by $5,000, your rich ratio would be 1. Now, that's good. That means you have exactly the income that you need for your expenses. Now, the best scenario is when your rich ratio is higher than 1. If your rich ratio is higher than 1, then you're in great shape. If your rich ratio is below 1, then you have to start thinking, hey, what can I do to improve this? Do I adjust what I expect in retirement? Do I adjust how long I work? Do I adjust when I take Social Security? What can I adjust? What can I tinker with to make sure my rich ratio makes sense in the long term? So let's go through an example. And I wrote one out. If you're on the podcast, you can check out the YouTube channel, but it's nothing too crazy. I'll try to simplify it as much as I possibly can. So example number 1, we got a federal employee. He's got a pension, okay? He calculates his first pension, takes out taxes, he takes out reductions. He says, hey, I'm going to have about $1,500 for my pension every month. Let's write that down. Boom. He calculates his Social Security when he's going to take it. He said, hey, that's probably going to be about $1,500 net as well. Awesome. He has about $500,000 in his TSP. He says, hey, I don't know exactly what the market's going to do. Let's use a simple 4% rule to see what I could take out per month in retirement. So he does the math. He says, okay, with $500,000, you do the math, it comes out to about $2,000 a month that he can use to live off in retirement. So basically for him, that means he's going to have $5,000 a month of income for his needs, for his wants, everything in retirement ready to go. So that's the first part of his rich ratio. Now, he goes back and says, what expenses, what needs am I going to have in retirement? He does the math, he makes a budget, whatever he needs to do. He says, hey, I'm going to need about $4,500 a month to live the way I want, to do the things that I want, to pay a mortgage if he still has it, or whatever it is, that's what he needs, that's what he calculates. So, you take the $5,000 of income, and you divide it by the $4,500 of expenses or needs and wants in retirement, and his rich ratio comes out to 1.1, just a little more, but about 1.1 is his rich ratio. And like we said, having a rich ratio of above 1 is good. You're in a good spot. That means you got a little more income than you need / want in retirement. That's a great thing, right? So, that's a good example. Now let's go through maybe a not so good example, and it might surprise you because of the balance of his TSP. Let's jump right in. So, this gentleman, pension of $2,000, Social Security, another $2,000, and he's got a TSP balance of $1.5 million, so substantial, right? A substantial amount in his TSP. He does the math with the 4% rule. That comes out with a monthly income from his TSP of $5,000. And with the TSP, I'm not taking into taxes. If it's traditional TSP, of course, you have to take taxes out before you can actually spend that money. But think about that when you think about your own numbers. So, for this gentleman here, he's going to have a monthly income of about $9,000 in retirement. He looks at a situation and says, hey, I live in a pretty expensive city. There's high taxes, lots of things to think about. There's, I have lots of traveling plans, I like nice things. He needs 10 grand a month to live the way that he wants in retirement. So he does the math, he says 9 grand divided by 10 grand, his rich ratio is only 0.9. So, because his rich ratio is below 1, he has to start thinking, hey, how much farther do I want to work until retirement? How do I get my rich ratio to a point that I'm comfortable retiring? Whether it is lowering your expectations, maybe moving to a cheaper city, maybe delaying Social Security and taking a part-time hobby or part-time business, something while you increase your Social Security, right? There's lots of ways, lots of strategies that you can use to increase those things to make sure your rich ratio is in a good spot. But going through the process of calculating your rich ratio, and like I showed, once you have the numbers for your pension, your Social Security, your TSP, once you kind of have those numbers, it's pretty easy to calculate your rich ratio. Probably the hardest part of all of this is, okay, what is my pension actually going to look like after taxes, after reductions? What's Social Security actually going to look like after taxes, after, maybe if you're working, after reductions, right? And what about your TSP? What is that actually going to look like? And that's hard to know because the market goes up and down depending on how you're investing. It's going to bop, move around a little bit, right? But once you get a pretty good grasp on those, you can start running your numbers to see in a nutshell where you stand. And like I said, everyone's situation is different. Some people are going to have more taxes. Some people are going to have less. Some people have a mortgage still. Some people have car loans. They have things that they have to worry about that may need higher income in retirement. So, like I said, these numbers aren't going to be your numbers, but definitely for yourself, start thinking about it, start calculating your own rich ratio to see how far you are from being prepared to retire, to be financially free, regardless if you are 20 years out, 5 years out, or a month out. Definitely think about it so that you are prepared for the future. So that is it for today. I hope you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.